I want to remind you of where things are at between India and the United States as they prepare the groundwork for the 6th round of trade talks. Here's a reminder of what the United States want. They want market access for agri and dairy products, which is something that is very sensitive for India. They want the reduction of non-tariff barriers. They want tariff reductions on industrial and mechanical goods, lower tariffs to enhance competitiveness of US products in India. Now let me show you what India wants from any trade deal. Full exemption from US tariffs. Currently it's at 50%. Complete relief from 26% reciprocal tariffs. India also wants duty concessions for labor-intensive sectors, which are India's edge, and a social security agreement, which is also very important for India. Now, let me just take you through the trade tensions and how things are much better today as those talks actually kicked off. 50% tariff imposed on India by Trump. Remember that. The Prime Minister says India will not bow, will put its interests first. That's what the Prime Minister said in Gujarat. The action taken by the Trump administration, advisors and aides accuse India of fueling the Russia-Ukraine war. The reaction from India continues to buy Russian crude oil, calls out Western hypocrisy, and in fact in August took its import of Russian oil even to a higher level, almost matching China. Then the third action by the Trump administration said the US is India's biggest market. The reaction, Prime Minister pushes the Buy Swadeshi campaign, Make in India, Buy India. Then there was an action, a US threat of secondary sanctions. India reacted by a strategic alignment with Russia and China at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin just a few days ago. Let's get an expert view on what is, after many weeks of turbulence and uncertainty and volatility between India and the United States, finally a positive day for the two countries. Peter Navarro, in many ways, is now hopefully a sideshow. He has hopefully served his purpose, and now it is between the leadership of the two countries to move towards a real and substantive, mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement. Raymond Vickery, former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce, is live with me, and also Ashok Malik, partner and chair in India with the Asia Group. Thanks very much to the both of you for being with me. Ashok Malik, I would like to come to you first. A positive day, 7 hours of discussions today after what seemed like an endless meandering tirade and deterioration in relations between the two countries, but they seem to be positive now. What is your reading? Are the two countries genuinely moving towards a beneficial bilateral trade agreement?
Thanks for having me, Shiv. Despite the rhetoric of the past few weeks, which has sometimes been ugly, admittedly, the fact is that two sides, the USTR and the Indian Commerce Ministry, have more or less reached a trade deal and have closed the text, or more or less closed the text, on tranche 1A of the bilateral trade agreement. Of course, any trade agreement can always be improved, and there will be bells and whistles discussed and added to. Even in agriculture, there is scope to do a lot. Yes, we can't buy wheat and milk in a big way from the US, but we can buy even soybean for certain industrial uses, though it's GM soybean, not for human consumption, but for industrial uses. We can buy sorghum and corn for ethanol production, or in the case of sorghum, for livestock feed. So, and certain types of nuts, certain types of fruit, in industrial commodities which can aid Indian manufacturing. There is an enormous basket of goods and commodities that India can import from the US, and I understand that is already part of the text that's been negotiated. I am fairly confident that we will have a trade deal because, quite honestly, it's not the substance of the agreement that the two sides have been negotiating that has been the problem in the past few weeks, is the politics. If the politics is now being managed by the two principals who have reached out to each other on social media, then chances of a trade deal actually fructifying are much higher.
It's good to hear that because, it has been very difficult, Ashok, and you know this, to ignore the politics because it was unprecedented in many ways. India and the US do have a turbulent past, but, in our lifetimes, I would say this was something that was genuinely a spectacle. Raymond, what is your reading? If we were to put aside the very damaging things that have been said, and said even as recently as a couple of days ago by members of the Trump administration. Do you feel positive about a trade deal now?
Well, thanks very much for having me. Peace and prosperity must be waged just like war, and that requires that you have a strategy, that you have partners, and that you have an economic component to that strategy. Unfortunately, President Trump has none of these. He views everything like a real estate transaction, that there's going to be a winner and a loser, and he's going to come out and show that he's the winner. What is going on here is really a relaxation of Trump's interest in India as something that can aggrandize him. Thank goodness for Prime Minister Modi, Minister Goyal, Minister Jaishankar, that they haven't risen to the bait, but have been steady throughout this. They also, it seems to me, have realized a previous mistake of Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump, and a belief that you could deal with this sort of mindset of a real estate transaction in an ordinary way. At a working level, we've long had a deal on the table. Even in Trump 1, we were close to a free trade agreement, which basically vetoed, and that's happened again. These two countries, these two great democracies, have to be able to work together if we're going to ameliorate any of the problems that face the world in regard to peace and prosperity. And the problem is we have to get past this transaction and let the true interests of India and the United States work together so that we get a deal and move on and try to put this behind us. There's strong bilateral support in the United States, Republican and Democratic alike, through previous administrations for the relationship, and I have every belief that eventually it'll come back to the surface. But unfortunately, this has pushed us into this transaction mode.
I completely agree. And, I imagine that things are being dealt with substantially differently, Ashok. And I want you to weigh in on that. There must have been so many learnings in terms of how to deal with this sort of real estate approach. That in itself is not new. We've known that before in the first Trump administration, and I imagine Indian diplomats are well aware of how Trump does things. But the things that have been said, the politics that sort of took over the relationship over the last couple of months, how would that color how we're negotiating now going forward?
I'll come to the first part of your question first. Actually, the Indian government, Indian diplomats, Prime Minister Modi, Mr. Goyal, realized well in advance, in fact, of President Trump being sworn in, that trade and tariffs would be a very important part of his agenda. And which is why India, unlike many other countries, was not negotiating tariffs. It offered to negotiate a trade deal, a trade agreement, which is unusual, which is different from many other countries. And the Indian offer, yes, there were trade negotiations in Trump 1.0. I recognize that. But the Indian offer this time is substantially different and much more ambitious. It is the most ambitious trade offer and market access offer India has ever made to any partner. The Indian side has really gone out of its way. It is a win-win for both countries because fundamentally these are two economies that are not hostile to each other, that are not threats to each other. They are complementary economies. And there is the Indian side, quite honestly, negotiated in good faith. Of course, any deal can be improved upon. Now that the rhetoric is hopefully behind us, and the two principals have both indicated that they would want a trade deal to go ahead because they recognize the opportunity cost is very high. I'm confident that, reasonably confident that we will have a deal. Does that mean all problems are solved forever? I'm not suggesting that. The political price of the past few weeks and some of the rhetoric that's been heard is there, and it will be paid by the relationship. But if we can manage to get the tranche 1A of the bilateral trade agreement done, it would certainly be a big achievement, and it would give a lot of economic stakeholders in this relationship, including businesses in both countries, a lot of relief.
Raymond, one of the consequences of the last couple of months and some of the things that the Trump administration and Trump himself and his people have said have sort of confirmed to not just the Indian political establishment but also the public some of many historical fears about doing business with the United States. And these go back many decades, and you know this very well. Is it going to be difficult to bridge that? You have said that India standing up to some of these pressure tactics by Trump, has been a very good thing. But going forward, do you think that's sustainable for the two democracies? Trump isn't going to be there forever, but it has had a deep-seated effect.
Well, I think that it has had a deep-seated effect. I think he's done more damage in 24 hours than we were able to do good in 30 years of trying to overcome past discontinuities between the U.S. and India. It is always a matter of trust and building trust, and we've worked at it for 30 years. Through many difficulties, through Republican and Democratic administrations alike. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to wipe that out overnight. It's going to take a long, hard slog. But India, of course, needs to look not just at what it can do to oppose and to say that, yes, we're making India great again, just like it's MAGA is making America great again. That's not the right approach. What has to happen is India looks to its own interest. What are its interests in lowering tariffs and entering in more competition? What are its interests in being able to reach out and further its values across the world? This idea that you can have a fortress USA, a fortress India, a fortress China, and it's not going to work together is disastrous in the long run. So yes, we're making some progress, but it's going to be a long time, it seems to me, before many in India, particularly those in the populace who don't deal with this every day, to forget the kinds of remarks that have been made by idiots like Peter Navarro and others in regard to the U.S.-India relationship. But I have every hope and belief. I've been coming to India since 1964 when I was a Fulbright, and I've seen it go up and down and back and forth. But the long-run trajectory is for cooperation between these two greatest democracies in the world.
Raymond, if you've been visiting India since 1964, then you've literally seen the best and the worst of this relationship. So I'm going to take your word for it most definitely. Ashok, final word to you. The India-US relationship is more than a substantive one. There are sensitive aspects to it. There is intelligence sharing. There's a large defense and military trade aspect to it, quite apart from just the trade. Do you think the trust, any damage to trust between the two countries over the last couple of months will have a bearing on any of this? Will there have to be more guardrails? Will India be doing things differently beyond just the trade relationship as far as the US is concerned?
Look, the manner in which Washington, or certain people in Washington and close to the administration or the administration have spoken about India, the manner in which the India was singled out for punishment, almost for buying oil from Russia, which is perfectly legitimate, and no other country was touched. That will have a cost. Of course, if we have a trade deal, it will offset some of that damage, but some damage will remain, and one needs to recognize that public opinion and broader systemic and political opinion in this country has been affected by the events of the past few weeks. That can't go away in a hurry. But a good trade deal, which is good for both countries, would certainly help alleviate some of those pains.
We'll have to wait and see. Thank you very much, Raymond and Ashok, for being with me. This was illuminating. We all hope that there will be a positive trade deal. The India-US relationship is an old one. It's a deep one. It has many different layers. There are huge people-to-people ties as well. And hopefully the damage of the last 2 months will be repaired, and the trade deal, whenever it comes, will be the beginning of that.